And welcome back to another episode of Civil Discord. I am one of your hosts out here in the People's Republic of Texas, repping my freedom over everything because I truly believe that. Down here where it's hot and crazy and miserable, but nonetheless, we're still out here making it work. The notorious BLG, aka Maurice Jones. And with me, as always, here more often than I am, is the one, the only supreme overlord of liberty out there in the People's Republic of California, taking a break from her studies because it's over. Amanda, how's it going?
It's going great. I have a cool special announcement. So I found out early, or I guess last week, that within the next couple of weeks, I'm gonna be starting training with and being represented by a really, really cool outfit called Young Voices. It's kind of like it's like a talent / PR agency for young. I'm qualified as young here. So people who are more free market oriented and getting their start in commentary and journalism. And I've seen, their contributors, and they do amazing work in terms of placement and like being a career launch pad. So I'm super psyched.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm going to be starting, working with them and learning from them. And I am very pumped for this. So
that is awesome.
Yeah.
Congrats.
Thank you.
That's phenomenal. I don't have any news.
Well, you're expecting a child, so
well, yeah.
Yeah.
But no, that is awesome, and I can't imagine anybody who's better for that position than you.
Thank you.
You are phenomenal. The way that you handle yourself and the way that you write and how you expose things and how you put things together. I don't know if you guys know this, but if you read our lovely little show notes, Amanda is the one who puts all that together. If you go back and read the beginning of the show notes, you can tell when Amanda took over the show notes. 100%, not even a question. You can 100% take it by, okay, this is about the episode that Amanda started doing show notes and so forth. And just the amount of research and things that you do. It is, I cannot imagine anybody else who is more qualified to even be sitting in that role. For sure. And it is an honor to have you on this podcast. Like, imagine, I can't imagine anybody better. And here you are, my counterpart, right here sitting next to the screen or whatnot. Even though you're out there in People's Republic of California. I thought your announcement was going to be that you're moving. But then I was like, she's not finished with school. Like, she's not moving. She's not going anywhere.
We'll wait at least a few months for that announcement. We'll wait. But yeah, so it's super exciting. I did for my for part of my sort of audition, if you will. They needed a video, and they also needed an article. They needed like an unpublished, unedited op-ed draft. And so I wrote one specifically for this file, and it was 600 to 800 words. And if anyone's ever read my previous writing, that's a challenge for me. I did end up crafting about a 700-word article. So, yay.
Hey, yeah, there you go.
It's possible.
Kudos. So before we get started, I know last year about this time we released an episode about why Maurice hates Juneteenth. And this, that, and the third. But I don't hate Juneteenth. Again, as I stated in that episode, and I will state for everybody, setting the record straight, I will always celebrate the emancipation of Black people 100%. So even though we're not recording on the exact day of Juneteenth, but happy Juneteenth to all of those who celebrate that. Enjoy, because congrats, Joe Biden gave you a federal holiday. Yay. Go figure. But no, it is pretty fun. And I had some family come into town. Of course, I'm very close to Galveston. And for those of you who don't know, Juneteenth is really a Texas holiday. Texas has been celebrating Juneteenth since Juneteenth actually happened. But Galveston is where the ships actually came in to let people know that they were that the slaves were freed and so forth. And so that was a big deal. And so, of course, every single year, Galveston has a huge parade. and a huge thing. And my mom and her husband were actually able to go out there and enjoy that time. And I imagine that it was a blast. I unfortunately did not, because I was partaking in a baseball game. So
that was your
sitting in a
celebration. There you
suite. Yeah. So we were celebrating that. And a happy Father's Day to all of those fathers who listen, and a happy Father's Day to all of those mothers who are acting as mothers and fathers in their kids' roles or whatnot. Kudos to you for doing double the work. And kudos to you fathers who are being great fathers and building young people up to be great citizens of the world, because we need a lot of that with the way things are going so far. So all of that being said, in case you guys didn't know, COVID is still somewhat out there. I had my niece, my brother-in-law, his daughter caught COVID, but she was over it in the matter of, I think, 3 days, like literally 3 days. And she is 3. So she was, it was literally in and out. She had a slight fever that Sunday. And then by that Tuesday, she was up running around, going to dance and doing all kinds of things. So it is what it is. But yes, COVID is still going around. Things are still happening. Of course, I don't make light of anybody catching it. But Amanda posted this article of something that is actually something that we have been saying for I don't know how long, stuff that a lot of people have been saying for I don't know how long, and for a while was a conspiracy theory. It was that whole QAnon type thing, and now all of a sudden, people are now starting to jump on board. Amanda, what's going on with that?
So yeah, I just found out about this morning. In fact, thank you, Nate and Chuck. Good Morning Liberty. And this happened over the weekend. No one is really, well, a few people are reporting on it, but this is broken by the Daily Mail. WHO, World Health Organization chief, believes COVID did leak from a Wuhan lab after a catastrophic accident in 2019. Despite publicly maintaining all hypotheses remain on the table. That's the headline. We're going to get into it. Now, the funny thing is, like, I missed the transition between COVID probably leaked from a lab and you're not allowed to say that anymore. And then when I learned that people weren't allowed to say that anymore, I was like, that's kind of dumb. I'm going to keep on saying it. So right. I missed that transition.
Right.
But at any rate, there is a WHO, and it's really interesting that this guy has not said this publicly. The head of I'm reading from the Daily Mail. The head of the World Health Organization privately believes the COVID pandemic started from a leak from a Chinese laboratory, a senior government source claims. While publicly, the group, the WHO, maintains that all hypotheses remain on the table about the origins of COVID, the source said, I'm going to try this, Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, Director-General of the World Health Organization, had recently confided to a senior European politician the most likely explanation was a catastrophic accident at a laboratory in Wuhan, where infections first spread during late 2019. My first question is, where is this guy? Is he safe? Have we heard from him? Is he in a room with slanted floors somewhere?
Right.
I want to know where this dude is, but it is very interesting that this is apparently this is leaked as him confiding to a government source about this, rather than coming out and saying it. And I'll say again, like, it's important to know where this came from, not so we can pin blame. Some people might want to, but so we can know and prevent it from happening again.
Exactly.
And if we know where this came from, maybe we know more about what its properties are, right? Like exactly. how to prevent, or how to treat it, how to prevent it. We could
right.
have been ahead of the curve with it if we'd known, hey, we were mixing this SHC014 with WV1. If people have read the reports on goodmorningliberty.us, y'all know I've been through the eco-health proposals.
Right.
So there's a lot that we could know about how to treat this virus that we don't know because we're not being honest about its origins.
Exactly.
And, we'll see what happens with this.
Exactly. And I know, back when COVID was at its height and we were discussing this, that was our key point. It was, we're not trying to blame anybody for anything. Things that happen naturally things that happen naturally, whether that's in society for us or whether that's in nature, things that come about organically, we treat different than things that are developed in a lab and forced and things that happen accidentally. Like, those things happen different because they evolve differently. Like, one is typically sometimes slower, and it attacks one thing over the other and so forth, and then others, it can move more rapidly. And so if you understand the origins and whether something happened, whether from a wet market or whatnot, or whether something actually happened in the lab, like, that's a big deal to know. And for a long time, I do not understand why people would deem that as, oh, well, that's, that they would say that's Asian hate and things of that nature, because you're blaming where it come from. And I get, when people were calling it the Kung flu, or the China virus and all of that stuff. Like, I get how you could like, that's probably not appropriate and whatever. But to truly understand the origins, it helps you, like you said, helps you combat it. It helps you understand, okay, how should we address this with this? How was it developed? Because if it developed in a lab, we have to know, okay, so what is causing this? What are the two active, in, let's say, ingredients or whatever that cause everybody to have the said reaction to this specific thing? Because that gives people a better, so if the main venom that is in your blood, it gives you a way to create some anti-venom. You're like, okay, I know what combats that, and then you move on, kind of thing. And so like I said, it is very important. We've now come to understand that COVID is going to be an endemic, and it is not going anywhere. It is here to stay. Hopefully it becomes very similar to the flu in regards of, people just kind of talk about it. It becomes a season. It happens. If you don't want to get your flu shot, you ain't got to get your flu shot. If you don't want to get your COVID booster, your vaccine, you don't have to get it. If you want it, you can get it. And nobody makes fun of anybody for it. Nobody penalizes anybody for not getting it. Because I feel like we are now over 2 years into this, and things should be to a point where they have leveled out, and people's emotional heightened state should now have come back to reality and leveled off. It hasn't. It hasn't. Right.
Los Angeles out here still trying to make fetch happen. UCLA is, I mean, really, like, really trying to make fetch happen. UCLA reinstituted a mask mandate for the summer. I'm like, bruh, you got it. No one's even there.
Right.
No one's. What? Yeah, it's going to be a thing. It's going to be a thing that Los Angeles is going to do. And you know what? You have to know when you can't fix someone.
Right.
And in this case, that someone is Los Angeles.
Exactly.
So I thought I could fix them. But, another thing that we could know if we were looking at these origins is we could determine what might be a useful antigen for inoculation versus something that is actually causing the problems upon infection, because we're seeing that it seems to be the spike protein itself that is making COVID so kind of like an immune system gremlin, right? Like, everyone kind of reacts to it differently because of this. Evidently, the spike protein is doing wacky stuff that can't really be predicted. If we had sequences, if we could track the parent viruses, we might be able to develop, we might be able to come up with a better antigen that maybe doesn't pose certain risks to certain populations, as opposed to the spike protein, which can pose certain risks to certain populations. And that didn't skip. I repeated myself. Certain ones, not everyone. Relax.
Exactly.
But this is on so many levels. This is sort of an abdication of the WHO's global duty. Although now I hear they're on to bigger and better things, trying to rename the monkeypox virus to make it not racist, which is also a story.
Oh, well, and I guess I will leave that for another day because it is Juneteenth, and I guess you could say where people would deem the term monkey as racist, even though it is referring to a monkey, like an actual physical animal, and not a racial term. But hey, anyway, that is beside the point. Before I get riled up, because there are a lot of things that rile me up, and you all know my favorite thing to talk about, because we talk about it at least once a month. It is literally inflation, because the numbers came out again. And boy, oh boy, what can I tell you? They are who we thought they were. The numbers are exactly what I expected. It may not have been what the Fed expected. It may not have been what anybody else expected, but it is 100% what I expected. It is the highest, and it is the highest inflation rate since what you have on here, December of 1981.
That is correct.
It is, and be wary. Okay, if you share a meme that has of SpongeBob that says "Rest in peace to the U.S. dollar," and the caption reads, "This is the highest inflation rate ever," you will be fact checked, and they will deem it as false information, because it's not the highest ever. It's the highest in 40 years. So, nonetheless, it is what it is. I had a friend who actually shared that, and they got in trouble for that.
That's
but
ridiculous.
Inflation, the consumer price index, because
Right.
you'll have some people who say, oh, well, consumer price index and inflation are not the same thing. And I get it, they're not. This is just one of the best indicators of what inflation actually is. So if you want to argue semantics and stuff like about that, we can do that later. We can do it in the comments on this video. But 8.6% year over year for the month of May.
Yes.
That is a lot of money that has been stolen from you over the past year. And I promise you, I'm going to try to relax in discussing this, because I am not feeling well. My chest hurts, and getting my blood pressure and stuff up is probably not good for my health at this particular point in time. My heart may beat out of my chest, but nonetheless, that is utterly ridiculous. So if you didn't get a raise last year, the value of you have now lost 8 point in May versus May, you lost 8.6% of your spending abilities. So you now make 8.6% less than you did a year ago.
And exactly. And we're seeing that real wages decline 0.6% from April to May. April to May, over the course of 1 month, real wages, adjusted wages declined 0.6%, 3% over the last year. Your real wages declined 3% over the last year.
Yep.
Meanwhile, core inflation rate, excluding food and energy, is up 6%. Maurice is absolutely right. CPI is up 8.6%. And fuel prices in particular are up 106.7%.
Yep.
Ladies and gentlemen, I do not want to hear anyone complain about gas prices. You do not get to complain to me about your gas prices. No, the only people who do are people who are with me suffering through this in Los Angeles. It costs, so I drive with love. I chose this car because it's an amazing car, a Dodge Avenger. It has great glutes. Okay, great glutes on this Dodge Avenger. His name is Neo Car, and I love him. So it will cost me a little over $100 to fill up a tank on a Dodge Avenger. We're not talking about like a huge truck.
Hold up. No.
Yeah.
No. $100.
A little more.
Over $100 to fill up a Dodge Avenger.
Yeah.
We're talking like 12, maybe I would
12 to 15.
12 to 15 gallons.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That makes me sick. I literally want to throw up right now.
So, and Yes, and again, part of this has to do with why are California's fuel prices so much higher. This is a little bit of a different rant for a different time. Part of it does have to do with the taxes, but also because California, I know I've said this before on the podcast, has a special blend that is actually, funnily enough, emits more carbon. It has worse emissions for trucks. It's diesel blend than like normal blends.
Yep.
So it's really just about virtue signaling. But California has a special blend that cars have to use, and the treatment process is very expensive. The treatment process itself also contributes a little bit to emissions. If you look at the numbers, it seems like a lot of what we do to make our gas, in quotes, cleaner here produces emissions that offset those projects, those enterprises, those intentions.
Right.
So that's gas. And of course, Joe Biden has come out and is criticizing oil companies for overcharging and being greedy. I have a question. Why does no one ever applaud oil companies for being altruistic when gas prices are low?
Right.
When gas is $2 a gallon, nice job, oil companies. You decided to be altruistic.
Exactly.
No one ever says, why are oil companies selectively greedy? They just like pick a time to be greedy, or
exactly.
I don't.
It literally makes no sense, and that was one of the questions that I brought up to one of my friends. So I have a friend who works in oil and gas, and he's been in the industry for about 5 years. And of course, go figure, we're in the Houston area, so oil and gas is one of the big industries in our city. And he was talking about how people always want to come up to him and they don't know what he does for a living, and so they'll talk about, oh, I can't believe the gas prices are so high. You know, these oil and gas companies are charging too much, and they just greedy and blah blah blah. And he will respond and say, oh, so were they not being greedy 3 years ago when gas was affordable for you? Oh, if they were, then like if they weren't, then did you applaud them? And if they were, if they were greedy then as they are now, why weren't they charging these high rates now? Like I've never understood why people think that. It's especially in the sense of like, you understand the reason typically prices fluctuate is, well, in the very base level is supply and demand, like very base level. There are reasons why, but supply and demand is the big issue. And I was talking with him and he was like, that's honestly it. It's the fact that it takes forever for oil and gas companies to actually dig wells in order to be able to produce these things. So by the time, if they dig a well and they're using it to, let's say they're using it to produce gas, by the time it gets to you, like the very first time you're actually seeing gas come off of that well, it's probably been about 6 months. And then in order to turn it into actual gas to put in your car, you're talking about another 6 to 8 months. So by the time things actually roll around, you're talking over a year before things actually come to you. And so it's not like they can all of a sudden vamp up the production of supply that's needed. And then in turn, he was talking about how you have the federal government is making it harder for them to actually supply gas, and you do what they do, that it's harder for them from a legislative standpoint, and it's harder from them because they can't get banks to actually lend to them, you know, for long-term projects, because when you have the government saying, hey, we don't want you doing that, the banks are like, okay, we won't do that. Like, and so it just makes these things so much harder. And then in turn, you got people who were actually going back to work, as in driving. And so since a whole lot of people are back on the roads pre-COVID, you know, not quite pre-COVID numbers, but close to pre-COVID numbers as far as people actually commuting back and forth to work, and your supply is actually decreased because you haven't been able to do the production that you normally do, then that's how you get prices moving. Like, it's not, I will say this, I do not like blaming one specific thing on the reason why prices are so high and so forth, because there's a multitude of reasons why prices are high. So when people talk about, well, Joe Biden this and Joe Biden that, I would say his administration has some culpability to it for sure. Like a lot of the things that they want to put in place and say that they can and can't do and whatnot, that's a part of it. But there's more to it than just that. So don't go on this rant of Joe Biden this and Joe Biden that and blah, 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 or whatnot, because there are a lot of reasons as to why fuel prices are as high as they are, but definitely don't blame it on Putin's war in Russia. Like that is 100% not the case at all, because prices were rising prior to that. So
and the absurd thing too is, I know I've said this before as well, but now we have President Biden petitioning Venezuela to help fund us, to help to give us oil. Okay, I've looked again. I've looked at the literature on this. Venezuela's extraction methods are so much worse for the environment, are so much less eco-friendly than any of the extraction methods that we have in the US. It is absolute folly, and it is complete virtue signaling that is devoid of any actual environmentally salutary intent for them to be going now to Venezuela. And bunch of thoughts on the regime in Venezuela, but let's just focus on the environment, because that's something everyone can agree is a problem, as opposed to socialism, which is sorry.
I know some people who now live in the United States who left Venezuela for said reasons or whatnot. Like they were kidnapped a few times and
but at any rate, bad for the environment, bad for the economy, bad for the people. Interestingly, I saw, speaking of socialism, saw an interesting tweet. Someone was, poking fun on Twitter, and said, Joe Biden is blaming oil companies for high oil prices. I'm just waiting for him to start blaming the farmers for high food prices.
Hey, they're coming for you. You guys aren't safe either. It is 100%. It is. That's slowly moving out, because it's the grocery store's fault that they're charging so much, because of corporate greed. The grocery stores, who at the time, and I used to work for a grocery store for 14 years, and I did their financials, and I know all that. When I tell you, grocery store profit margins are literally pennies on the dollar.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you're talking 2-3%. Okay. Now, granted, that's a lot when you're dealing with millions of dollars of sales a week in one specific store or whatnot, but still pennies on the dollar. I mean, their labor cost is ridiculous when you think about it. But they were blaming it on that. So that'll just, the whole trickle down economics, it'll just trickle on down to the farmers, and the farmers are charging too high of a price. But they're charging too high of a price because it costs them more to transport the crops from one spot to another. And it's because the oil companies are so greedy, and they're charging this and that. And it is what it is. But Amanda, you have a note that's on here in our show notes that I was actually going to bring up, because we actually talked about this last night on my ride home with said friend who's in oil and gas. And he asked me a question. He's like, dude, why is it the way that it is? Like, what's going to happen? Because we were talking about the deficit spending and all this stuff, and printing trillions of dollars and expecting nothing to happen. And what is it going to take to fix it? And I turned to him and I said, you know what? It's going to be able to take people who are willing to eat whatever the cost is right now to save generations in the future. I don't think that people are willing to do that, but I can tell you, I am 100% willing to eat whatever I have to eat in order to make sure my kids, my grandkids, my great grandkids have a better system that is set up for them to be more economically sound as a country, better off when it comes to their US dollar, better off when it comes to the ability to build wealth or whatnot. Because I'm learning as a parent, that is something that you always want to do. It's, you want to make sure that your kids are better off than you were at whatever age they are. So at 5, I want to make sure my daughter is better off than I was at the age of 5. And if I continue on this track, she will be. But that is the goal. So your thoughts on that? Sorry.
Yeah, no, as someone who is childless and barren, I completely agree. And I for me, it's the next generations. And I wrote, I think in the show notes, I said, in all honesty, I would so much rather all the monetary sins of the previous generations redound to me than to the next generations. I truly mean that. Now, I qualified that some, and I said, now part of that is because I don't trust the next generations not to socialize everything and to ameliorate the situation and drive us straight into full-blown socialism. As long as I'm around, there will be a radical advocate for liberal market policies. But it's, and capitalism has to be defended in every generation, because it's the sort of thing that, unlike socialism, cannot stagnate. So it has to be defended in order to advance, and it has to be advanced in order to be defended.
Right.
But with with the fact that, yes, this is now redounding to me and to you, Maurice, it's funny that the people to whom it, the people to whom it redounds are not the people in power who are charged with fixing the problem.
Right.
If you look at policymakers, if you look at Fed appointees, these guys are older. They're not going to have to deal with the worst of it.
Yep.
And by the way, we have a group of Fed appointees who didn't know that a whole bunch of helicopter money, after a bunch of inflationary spending and a bunch of deficit spending, was going to drive up inflation because good intentions. I don't know.
Right.
That to me is just mind-blowing, how you don't see that, how you don't understand. I don't have a degree in economics. I saw that. I'm like, I'm dumb. I saw that. So, to hear that, to hear, we had no idea. And then to know that the people who are charged with fixing this or charged with getting us off of this road are not going to have to deal with the worst of it is frightening. Now, I am actually heartened. I grimace, I grit my teeth every single time. But when the interest rates go up, there's a lot of me is very relieved. Because what else would you do? Right. What I'm afraid of is, and I said this in the show notes too, is this reaction that the public is going to have in response to these rising interest rates, right? And in response to this high inflation, high CPI, the reaction is going to be split, I think, between proponents of debt forgiveness and MMT and further intervention and expansionist monetary policy versus proponents of a major retraction of central bank powers and alternative money sources. And I think there are going to be a lot of battles fought over this, that we have resources today that we didn't have to respond to inflationary crises, a century ago. And even, much, much later than that.
Right.
But we have to fight to show people that these resources and solutions exist that did not exist in the past.
Right.
And this is all part of my Amanda's Red Girl Summer, where I'm just learning about various, revolutions and the like. And there are options that we have now that we didn't have before. And the goal is going to be to educate people on those options that don't involve maximalism and that in fact involve more self-ownership.
Yes, definitely. And one of the things that you had talked about as far as your fear of the next generation, this is my white pill moment. Okay. And I'm very seldomly white pilled. I just am. And that's not anything racial or anything like that. I'm just saying I just seldomly am. I continue to hear how the crazy people, the people who are on the far left who want all of this stuff, they're always like, I don't want to bring any kids into this world. And they talk about they don't want to have kids and this, that, and the third. And I say good, because I don't need you having any kids, teaching them this craziness. Allow me to have all the kids, start populating some stuff, because if that's the case, and then you raise your children up to be good citizens and have a true understanding of economics, and have an understanding that everybody is selfish in some sort of fashion. And so what do? What system that we currently have that we know of is the best for all, and you train them in that way. And in a sense, you indoctrinate your kids to be free market capitalists, then by all means, they will have better solutions to fix this than we ever will.
Yeah, and that's exciting. I get so excited about that. I'm really, really excited to see like what 5 generations from now. I hope there's some way that I can see what people come up with to solve problems.
Right, and that's why I'm white-pilled about it, because I'm like, if I have, my wife won't allow me, but if we have 7 or 8 kids, and all of them, I mean, some of them are bound to be crazy or whatnot, but we want to, I want the odds to ever be in my favor when it comes to that. So I want to make sure that hey, like, if I've got 4 or 5 of them, then they're free market capitalists, and I may have 1 or 2 that are kind of like, dad's psycho, so we may rebel against them in that manner. But when they turn 30, they'll realize, oh yeah, no, he was right about everything. Then they are able to build those things and to be great and to think critically, more critically than our current generation thinks or whatnot. I'm considered to be a millennial, so these Gen Zers are actually, a lot of them are actually they have turned out to be a more conservative generation than millennials do. So there's always a pendulum swing. There's always a pendulum swing. But I want to make sure that I can swing it as best that I can into a generation. So for those of them who do not want to have kids because they don't want to bring any kids into this crazy world because they're communists and they're socialists and this, that, and the third, I say bravo. Continue doing what you're doing, please, and thank you. The rest of the world thanks you for that.
See, and as opposed to actually bringing children into the world, I guess I will take the 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds in my classrooms or whatever eventually, and just like, hello class, you came here for your seminar on communisms. Well, I will indeed teach you about communism. Like I have so many stealth courses that I want to design, like to get the theories of redistributionism. And you know what? Capitalism is going to be one of them. We're going to learn about capitalism as a redistributionist theory because it is, check the Forbes 100 list over the past 20 years. There's a lot of transfer. Anyway, that was a thing. But you mentioned, you talked about people who are on the left and I think it's important to highlight the fact that the right is hardly innocent in this crisis that we had. And I know you know that, and I know you're not covering that up at all. But all this deficit spending, that's happening under Republican presidents. That's how you have all of this. The first helicopter drop came under President Trump, and Republicans and Democrats both caused this. And so that's part of what's going to make it so difficult for either Republicans or Democrats to address this honestly, because all each of them is going to want to do is blame the other.
Exactly.
They're both part of the problem.
Yep. They definitely are. And I mean, you were absolutely right. Like, I don't hide that I bash Republicans for it. I mean, let's be real. The last time the U.S. had some sort of balanced budget was under a Democratic president. Now, the Republicans will say, well, the Republicans controlled Congress. And I was like, okay, but whoever it is, both people have veered way off the course since then. So you got Bush 43 out here spending helicopter money. And then you got Obama spending more than all the other presidents combined, because George Bush did the same thing. And then you got Donald Trump doing the same exact thing, picking up where Obama left off or whatnot. So, and Joe Biden has literally picked up where Donald Trump left off. So, I mean, it is, again, I don't say that they are two sides of the same plane or two wings on the same bird, because I don't think that they are, but they both have policies that definitely hurt people, and they're looking to grow power than anything else. That is, I do not understand why anybody would want to go into politics for any other reason outside of to gain power. For the most part, there are a few exceptions. And when I mean few, I literally mean few. I probably know maybe less than 10 people who are on a federal level that are good, as far as they are not there seeking power. They actually want to make a difference. Most of the other ones, they have they literally have they're power hungry. I mean, on the left and the right, the Dan Crenshaws, the Lindsey Grahams, the AOCs, the who's the other what's old boy, crazy dude.
It's not narrowing it down for me.
I know Senator, not Lindsey Graham, Mitch McConnell. There he is.
Mitch McConnell. Okay.
Mitch McConnell. All those people, they're absolutely nuts. Kamala Harris, like every single one of those. And I feel like she's the very definition of power hungry. Like, and I mean, we all know how she got her way to the top. So that is poor journalism on my part.
It's your misogyny talking.
I'm sorry. That's 100% my misogyny talking. I do not have any verified sources with that to confirm what I alluded to actually happened, but nonetheless, you can I digress. But speaking of poor journalism,
I love it. I thought we were going there. I was like, yay. Okay.
Yeah, no, go ahead. Go ahead. Take it away. I saw it in the show notes and I was like, huh? What? And you explained it to me. I was like, okay, yes, we have to talk about it.
So in the show notes, I put USA Today has a Stephen Glass moment. For those who don't know, and I wouldn't have known this if I didn't watch the movie Shattered Glass. Stephen Glass, and I keep wanting to say Philip Glass, is a completely different person, very different person. Stephen Glass was a young reporter for the New Republic and wrote a bunch of just entirely fabricated stories and got away with it for quite some time, and then was finally caught when there was another publication that kind of pressed on the story that he'd written and was like, we didn't hear about any of this. Where, who are your sources? And there's a great movie called Shattered Glass that people should watch about this, but it's a true story based on true story. And USA Today has now had to remove 23 stories from this reporter who you almost on a human level feel bad. This young reporter who fabricated sources, who fabricated details. And of course, because the media like to eat their own, everyone is having a field day with this. CNN is, New York Post is, New York Times is, Washington Post is. So yes, USA Today, this is by Oliver Darcy, who's also been doing some shoe leather journalism with regard to the whole WAPO, Taylor Lorenz, Felicia Sonmez thing on Twitter. He's kind of like CNN's media watchdog, or one of them.
Right.
But Oliver Darcy has this story. USA Today removes 23 stories after probe finds reporter apparently fabricated quotes. A little bit more serious than that. It seems like so there was an audit that revealed, this is a quote from an editor's note written by USA Today's managing editor of standards. The audit revealed that some individuals quoted were not affiliated with the organizations claimed and appeared to be fabricated. The existence of other individuals quoted could not be independently verified. There's also some apparently part of the internal audit involved them trying to figure out whether this was intentional, or whether the reporter tried to then cover their tracks.
Right.
And some people are saying that they did, which is kind of even worse. And this just, I think, when we start hearing people argue for more for searches and search engines and social media to promote and algorithmize, which is not a word, but we're going to go with it.
We're going with it.
Yeah, reliable, established media sources. And this is a not uncommon phenomenon, especially within the last several weeks within media, where you just have improper journalistic ethics, improper vetting of stories, and no accountability whatsoever. I mean, it's hard to get away with something like this. It should be. It should be hard, because typically when you have a story, you have a fact checker at the paper that is, that is going through every single one of your claims and saying, okay, where did you get this? Let me see this source. And Previously, again, this is another Stephen Glass transition. Previously, it was, you rely on the journalist's own notes and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
But today, you have video, you have audio. It's very, very jarring that this was allowed to continue this long. And again, if we're talking about how companies need to be promoting journalism from reliable sources, then my next question is, like whom?
Right.
Because these scandals have just been flowing. And, with the
Right.
LA Times reporting that Jason Momoa testified in the Johnny Depp trial, this is rampant. So again, it bears repeating that there's a greater shift toward journalistic ethics within a more decentralized media ecosystem, which is exciting. But again, we need to realize this is an option.
Exactly. And I think it's funny that you have the media really eating its own, trying to act like they're not the ones who are who do the same exact thing. Like this is let's not act like the USA Today is the first media outlet that this has happened to. I mean, as you alluded to, in the past 4 weeks. Like, I mean, over the past few weeks, this has happened to multiple people on multiple different platforms. And so understanding that and knowing that, I think a lot of people would say USA Today is probably one of the more trustworthy media outlets when it comes to putting things out there. Now, granted, of course, like every single outlet has some sort of biases or whatnot, but they would probably say, well, USA Today is pretty kind of central or whatnot, and this, that, and third. And I'm not saying whether or not these articles lean left or leaned right or whatever, or what they were even about. Yeah. I'm saying that regardless of any of that, you need to understand that people always have some ulterior motive. When it comes to putting something in your face, it's always that, okay, so this article is what? Says what? Why am I reading this article? What is the point of this? Because they are always trying to deceive you, whether they are being truthful about the article and how they word it. Headlines, clickbaits, all those things are out there. And until we as a civilization, as society, whatever you want to call us, are skeptical of everything, we're going to fall for anything. And it is one of those things that I am happy that all this stuff is being exposed.
Yes.
100%. I mean, because as you talked about, that everything is now like you want this to be more and more decentralized. This is another example of, and this is slightly different, but we have we're starting to see this in the sports world. You're starting to have all these bunch of different sports podcasts coming up, and people are no longer looking to your big talking heads, even on ESPN or Fox Sports or whatever. They are literally going towards actual other people. And there's one guy, Golden State Warriors, they just won the NBA Finals, and there's one guy who is literally who after every game goes and records a podcast and talks about things that happen in the game, talks about the sport of basketball, and people actually love it, and people are flocking to him. He is the #1 sports podcast that's out there. Now, it could be because of his name and he plays for a team that's really good, and he's a good player in his own right, whatnot. But he does the same thing. JJ Redick, people have started to love him as a commentator because he's on these different shows, but he's very decentralized. He has his own podcast. He talks about this and that and this and that and the third, and people are doing that. And so the same thing that is happening for our trad and our trad media or whatnot is starting to be broken down in that system. Is happening not just in our traditional news media when it comes to stories as far as CNN and everything. It's happening everywhere. And if you don't recognize it, you are definitely going to be behind, and you're sitting there watching, you're waiting for here locally, you're waiting for KHOU to tell you what's happening in the world, or you're waiting until 6 o'clock to watch CBS News Nightly or whatnot, and they're telling you about all the flooding that's happening up in Yellowstone or whatnot, when you've had people who've been talking about it for, I don't know, 6 hours earlier or whatnot. You're you are going to be lagging in all of this. And of course, people who are listening to this do listen to podcasts. So this is, I mean, I'm probably preaching to the choir on this one, but understanding that if you have friends or family who are not adhering to this or understanding that, hey, we are now becoming decentralized, it's probably a good idea to let them know, right? Hey, just letting you know, everything that you listen to is not necessarily trustworthy. And of course, typically they are older generations and they don't want to update with technology, and that's fine. You know how to reach them better than I do, at least your family than I do. But you want to have conversations with them and say, hey, look, this is what's happening. We are becoming more decentralized. You have all these podcasts that you listen to. Podcasts are now more accessible than ever. The news is now more accessible than ever. Most of the time, things are on Twitter before they're anywhere else.
Yeah.
So people get their news from all kinds of places. So it is definitely something. It's a good thing to see that, hey, people are losing their trust in traditional media. They're going to different outlets, and I absolutely love it. Now, the big wigs of the corporations, they absolutely hate it. They hate it. They're like, I can't believe that they have bigger followings than we do, and they get better ratings than. I mean, Joe Rogan has gets more views than a lot of people who are on television, CNN, Fox News, all of them. Joe Rogan is still getting his huge numbers or whatnot. So it's a big deal. I love decentralization. It is every time I hear those words, it is music to my ears. Yeah. I absolutely love it.
And it's interesting, right? So I have a lot of thoughts about this. First of all, people complain about people in traditional media complain about this death of expertise, like, oh, well, people are going to these YouTubers and these TikTokers and they're not going to listen to the experts. And bro, on the one hand, you have an expert legal analyst versus an actual lawyer who is commenting and breaking down a case. You have an actual player who's breaking down games. So this is a renaissance of expertise. It's just not the expertise that you thought that you could own and get your hands on. I don't want my expertise to be owned by anyone. I want I want self-owning experts. And your point about Joe Rogan, one thing that is so, I think, interesting for people, and I'm not a huge Rogan fan. I'll occasionally listen to an episode. I actually probably wouldn't call myself a Rogan fan, but I understand his appeal. And his podcasts are so long. And so many people, especially if they're used to a traditional media ecosystem, don't understand, how is this 3-hour podcast? How can you have a 5-hour stream? And the thing is, these are hosts that, first of all, either are expert in something themselves or have an expert on to speak to the audience, and who treat their audience as though they're intelligent and take them along for a discussion. And in the weeds discussion, people want to feel like that other people think they're smart.
Right.
And if you watch most traditional media programming, you're not made to feel like you're smart. You're made to feel like, oh, you just want sound bites, you want quick hits, you want, you want emotionality, you want passion. And I think that was true when we didn't have as many alternatives for how we got information. And it was true when we didn't have the ability to consume media and information literally everywhere, no matter what we were doing.
Right.
So we needed to take out time to sit down and watch a report. So of course we wanted it quick and we wanted the top lines, but now we can be, running errands, working out, whatever, and we can have something on in the background. And so we actually don't have a limited time. I was going to use time preference very incorrectly, but we don't have limitations on how much time we can devote to consuming information.
Right.
And so therefore people want to be given information that makes them feel like they can actually understand something and become like a little mini expert in something.
Right. I absolutely love it. And I love the way that it's going. I love how media is changing. And it's more accessible to people, which is what I think the best thing about it is it is more accessible. Now I don't have to wait until 5 p.m., 6 p.m. to look at my nightly news to figure out what's going on. I don't wait for a specific show to go breaking. Like, it pops up on my phone. people who record podcasts every single day are talking about different things or whatnot. So, I mean, it is a great thing. It is 100% a great thing. And the more decentralized things can be, the better off I think we are as a society, because now you as an individual get to pick and choose how you want to consume said media and how that works. Unless it's CNN Plus, because they are utterly horrible and trash,
They don't
and
exist anymore.
no longer exist. Even I think Brian Stelter got booted
Oh dear.
off of CNN. I think, I don't know. I will have to. I saw something about Brian Stelter no longer being something, so I didn't go into it. But I was like, oh man, I need to look into that, because that would be gold too. Because he's like my age, and dude has no hair.
I'm generally surprised by his age whenever I am reminded of it.
Yes,
she said, trying to maintain tact.
I could have. Every time I see him, I was like, this dude's got to be well into his 40s. It's like, no, the dude's in his 30s. I was like, oh my gosh. I'm like, oh, this dude's around my age. It's crazy. So, but thank you all so much for sticking with us for this last 56 minutes or this hour or so of the podcast. We definitely appreciate you. Please like and share this show. Like us on the YouTubes. Follow us on Spotify. Leave a 5-star rating and a review, and subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts. We only grow because of what you do, and we are grateful for every single bit of that. Follow us on all forms of social media. We're out there. Again, we're on YouTube, so you can subscribe to our YouTube channel at Civil Discord Podcast. Follow us on Twitter at Civil Discord Pod. Follow us on Instagram at Civil Discord Podcast. Follow Amanda at Ajax the Griff on Twitter. She is doing so much of the Lord's work over there in that cesspool of Twitter.
Sometimes I wake up and choose violence and say that Naperville is not. Anyway, it takes too long to explain.
It is all good. And then follow me on Instagram at Call Me Maurice as well. Do all of that. Share the show with a friend, a family member, somebody who is old and needs to know that there are more ways to consume media than just staring at the TV for an hour of the day. Share it with all your friends and family and relatives. Do all of that, and we will be back again with another episode. Happy Juneteenth. And until next time, y'all be easy.
And stay fierce.